I'll just try to be.
I'm pressing it now as we're laughing, as we're smiling. Welcome, everybody. This is Sandra Laub once again with an interview with a grand. Dr. Joan Enoch is with us this afternoon when we're recording this. And I've noticed Dr. Joan since the very beginning, when we were first formulating. She has an expertise and a wisdom built from years of practice in medicine, in psychology, and she'll tell us about that. She's also a published poet, and she lives in the Pacific Northwest. She'll tell us about what that's like. Uh, and as these things go, I'm going to leave it on speaker. We're going to go for just about 40 minutes. I'll prompt Joan with some questions, but we are trusting that the divine feminine will support us in our conversation and transmit the love that Global Grandmothers Council Network is all about. We really are drawing on the root of peace and of health and of equanimity, and that all comes from love. So in this moment, I love you, Joan.
Thank you. Love you too.
That's what we all need to hear. And I'm going to ask you my first question now, which is a question that I ask a lot of our members who are still on Facebook and have yet to come over to the platform, which is in the birthing process. What drew you initially to Global Grandmothers Council Network on Facebook?
Well, I think it was that I live very much online now. I mean, in a lot of ways, it's not just Facebook, but I am a Facebook person because I have friends all over the country and I wanted to be able to stay in touch with them. So, what drew me to Global Grandmothers Council was global, yes, grandmothers, yes, and council I didn't know about yet, or what was going to happen, or whether there'd be a place for me in it, or and so I've tried to stay with it on Facebook. I have sometimes some trouble getting to it in other ways, but I hope that will get easier as you guys inform us more about the technology. Um, I'm very much, I was very much in my heart an activist, and sometime on my feet an activist in terms of peace issues. And um, I can't be on my feet very much now, but I I just thought global grandmothers. I could see us all in chains in front of the United Nations, and I knew that wasn't going to happen. But one could at least hope that one can send that kind of energy that says, you can't do this anymore. You can't keep killing people and the earth and everything. So I'm hoping that global grandmothers can do something in the world besides just that we interact with each other or whatever, but that we can do some good in the world.
Right there with you. And so agree. And maybe it will come to pass that we lock arms in front of the UN. We'd have to get you in from Washington. Now tell us about the where you live. Tell us about your home environment and how it supports you and how you support it. You said that it's that your life has now shrunk just a little bit because of ability.
Lots.
So how do you reach out, either online or with phone calls to any kind of a local community that we might be able to hook you up to the global one?
Well, I've lived here on the Olympic Peninsula for about 7 years. My handle was always just Joan the Gypsy, and so I did a lot of traveling in the country, and and worked in many different places. And I did private practice, but I also did I also wanted to work for the poor. And so I've done a lot of traveling around the country. When I was 76 and I retired, and that's now 8 years ago, I I wanted to live near at least one of my children, and it wasn't going to be the one in New York on the Connecticut border.
Oh,
Uh, so I moved to Washington to be near my son who lives on Bainbridge Island. And so I'm on the Olympic Peninsula, which is further from Bainbridge Island and a little bit off the grid. Um, I live in the town of Squim, which is a small town on the Olympic Peninsula near where you would go up to Hurricane Ridge, the Olympic Mountains. My involvement in these years has mostly been through a group called Olympic Peninsula Authors. There are two women who kind of run that, and a lot of us are getting on in years. There are some young people, and so we have worked in different places here and have uh, a, a, a gallery right in town here, the Blue Hole Gallery, up in Port Angeles in a park, and a museum in a park. And we've done different readings on different concepts, et cetera, et cetera. And so these women have put out books, and I'll just show this for a minute. This is the newest book, maybe the last book, but there's been about one book a year, and this one is called Inspired by Art and Olympic Peninsula Authors, and it's where we've written ekphrastic poetry, which really has to do with ekphrastic is writing poems to artworks. I mean, it's a bigger concept than that, but
yeah.
for now, that's enough. And so we try to be available in the local community in the ways that whatever it is that prompts someone to write something from their heart. I've kind of facilitated, not yes, while I was in Port Townsend, which isn't far from here, a group, and before that in other places I lived, in poetry and healing, because I believe that our words that we find within ourselves can be enormously helpful for our own healing. You know, I guess it's part of my old Freudian psychoanalytic training, which is, you have to make the unconscious conscious and then put it out there for things to happen for oneself or for others. So,
Right with you with that. And art in all forms is a way to express that unconscious. Do you
yes,
agree?
absolutely. I mean, I'm 10 thumbs, so I don't do gardening, which a lot of women do, and I don't do artwork in terms of painting or sculpture or anything. I paint by numbers occasionally, but mostly it's been through words. Mostly it's been through words, and to me, heart connections, connecting women with each other, couples with each other, whatever the makeup of the couple. So yes, I think words are very important.
Language is so powerful.
Yes, yes,
I'm a spoken word artist myself, and especially live theater for me is a healing place. It's a sacred place.
yes.
That might be a good entree to your reading, maybe one of your selections from that book or something else
Okay.
you had in mind.
Well, I guess I have to, okay, here's I don't know if people can see it well, but
Yeah.
the artwork is essentially a can that's been painted, and in it are paintbrushes.
Yes.
That was the artist's work, and I call this a few haiku because I stay with the haiku concept. So I wrote, the paintbrushes wait expectantly for the one who will give them life. They are most alive when colors are playfully singing on canvas. Drenched with acrylic oils or watery combines, They make fine music. Painting themselves here, they have a further reason to stand erect and proud. Attention is paid by the fine artist herself to tools of her trade. So that one. And here, I'll just do one more. I have one that's a little more political, and I think I'll stay out of that one unless one calls for it.
Well, we're actually speaking at a time a couple of days before the election.
I know.
Thank you there. That's
is,
beautiful.
That is a painting. I should have mentioned the other artist. This one is Nancy McFall, and it's called Steps. And so I called it Stairs Running Wild. I knew I needed to run away, but where? Suddenly they were there. The stairs shouting colorfully, luring me in. My soul fed. Climb to a new dimension of being, was said. Lose yourself at the top edge of this piece. Look out at that more colorless place. You've escaped and can exult in the pleasure of living in a vibrant work of art. Wow. Anyway, that's two of them. I have four in that book, and most of the people in the book I know, and they write beautifully, and it's been very hard for me to really consider myself a poet. I play with it, but there are much better poets in the world. Anyway.
It's serendipitous to me that that last poem was about stairs. I was at Sangha this morning, and we read a piece by Thich Nhat Hanh that was about being mindful of the stairs. The only stairs that I have by me, I once fell down the stairs in my own house. That was not pretty, but it was about the mindfulness of walking up and down your own stairs, which can be a safety thing and also just an easy mindfulness practice. So that synchronicity, I had stairs today. You wrote a poem about stairs. Can you speak about synchronicity in your life and when you've noticed it?
Well, nothing is coming immediately to mind, but one of the things you said reminded me of something. I have followed very loosely, I guess, but a Buddhist path through life from probably my early 20s, and now I'm in my mid 80s. It's been much stronger at times. It's more in the background at times. I've, taken courses. I've been on retreats. I've attempted to be silent for a week or so, but that's not possible for a New Yorker. But anyway, that's been a very important part of my life through the years. I guess I'm what's called a Jubu.
Yeah.
I'm Jewish. I'm from New York. I'm horrified by what's happening in Gaza. I guess I would have to at least publicly say I'm not pro-Israeli at this point, but that's a very complicated subject. Very complicated. And so yes, is that synchronicity? You mentioned something about mindfulness, which of course has become so much more mainstream in these last 20 or more years. But for me, Buddhist study was always more the psychology and the philosophy, and not as a religion. I guess there isn't a religion that I follow.
Have you ever meditated?
Oh, yes, I have. I'm really the best failed meditator I know. But of course, everybody says that. There were times that in retreats when I really tried mightily to clear my mind. I'll tell you about one small successful time. I was on a retreat. I think it was in Montana, and I decided in our break to take a walk. And rather than go back to the Sangha and the whole group that was meditating in a big hall, I sat out on the mountain and I did not fall asleep. But when the bell rang, when the chimes to begin, I started to meditate, and I actually totally lost myself. I no longer was present as an I, as a self. I was the bird song and the bee buzzing and the breeze in the grasses around me. Um, whether it lasted for 5 minutes or 15 minutes, I really couldn't tell you, but I as a person, Joan Enoch, was no longer present. And about that, which we could possibly say more, is I be I didn't think of it this way then, but I became nobody.
Mm-hmm.
I was everything and I was nothing. And I'm, as an 84-year-old, I'm now working on that to really become nobody while still having a life and enjoying the things I enjoy. But the concept of getting rid of ego has become more and more important to me, to the extent that it works. As we cling to our self, our ego, and say, no, let go, let go, let go, but can't necessarily.
That is the striving. Good old Emily Dickinson knew, right? I'm nobody. Who are you?
Mm-hmm.
And you remember that moment sensorially inside yourself with the sounds, with the, I don't know whether your eyes were closed or not, but you remember it to this day, and you'll remember it on the day you die, I'm sure, because it was an awakening for you to a
Yes,
whole new way of being.
it was a successful. Not that other meditations are not successful. I in no way mean to imply that. I mean, if we can lose ourselves for seconds before we start worrying or whining or thinking, but if we can just, even for moments, it's a success. But that was, the big success. Rare.
Congratulations.
Never happened again.
Understood. It's elusive.
Yeah, it is elusive. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And in one's life, it's so difficult to achieve in the doing of your life. I mean, I tried once to be mindful just in the moments from waking up to when I had to leave for school, which I had down to the minute, right? When you're working, you're very scheduled and you have to leave and you have to arrive at a certain time. I don't think I could get past the making of the coffee for my mug, or even brushing my teeth. But we're born into bodies. What can we say?
We are born into duality
Yes.
and we live in duality. And most of us never give that much of a thought, but for those of us who do, we know that there is something in a kind of unity, whatever we mean by that. But we are dual beings. We live in bodies. We live in our brains. We live in our eyes, inside, outside. We just do. Humans do.
We're hardwired for that.
We're hardwired. Yes.
If there was, you mentioned in your poetry group that you wish that there were perhaps more young people. What do you think's going on? You've seen a couple generations, and I know you have children, you are a grandmother. What do you think's going on with the generations flowing, with handing the world over as messed up as we made it, even though we had great dreams ourselves in our 20s and 30s and 40s and younger years of healing the world? We're both Jewish, tikkun olam, right?
Yes. Tikkun olam. Yes.
What,
I
how how do you think the young ones are viewing all this now? What can we, how
I
can we
think
help?
I think there's enormous disconnects, and maybe there always were. But if you live on a farm and you farm and your children farm and you go in for the breakfast at 5 in the morning all together, and maybe you get along, maybe you don't, but you stay connected for a lifetime. I find it hard to believe how I have two sons who are close to six, well, one's 61 and one's 60. I'm an old grandmother. My six grandchildren are all voting. I mean to say they're all over 20. They're 21 and over. So, and yet I remember two or three of them as little ones and felt connected. But geography separated us, for one thing. I lived across the country from three of them. I always lived across the country from three of them because three are on the East Coast and three are on the West Coast. But there's a real disconnect. I live online, but so do some of the young ones. And there's more connection online than there is. There's no connection this way. There's only connections this way. So it's very difficult. Could you excuse me 1 second?
Sure.